Yo people, welcome back to another video. Now this time the Daredevil review for episodes 1 and 2, and straight away all I can say is that as I predicted in a few previous Marvel videos, this will be the best project Marvel releases this year. After 2 episodes, it has already overtaken a lot of Disney Plus shows that have come out, such as Echo and She-Hulk. If they fumble the show from here, then it will be the usual Disney Plus thing where they run out of time. They do make references to Echo and She-Hulk in this show in terms of events that have happened, but you can easily just brush those off like nothing's happened. So if you didn't watch those shows, you literally didn't miss anything, and it was probably a good idea that you didn't watch it. They also do references to Punisher and Spider-Man, which is cool to hear from Kingpin especially, which also teases Spider-Man 4, a potential face-off there between Spider-Man and Kingpin. This show felt like a direct continuation from the Netflix version, but with a bigger budget, which for me was one of the key parts that this show had to nail, and it has done so far. I really like the show's approach in these first 2 episodes, where it's strictly been about the lawyer side of Matt Murdock and not really anything to do with the crime fighting, because it's also one of the main things that the Netflix version got so right, and one of the difficult parts to do so. We saw, for example, in She-Hulk, all their court scenes had no emotions, no stakes, written by people who had no clue what court is like and how these scenes should really take place. The show has really taken its time, done exploration, explained new characters, and built a strong foundation with a lot of dialogue, which is something that I like from these type of shows. I'm surprised Marvel still allowed all of this to happen, but to be honest, with the current state that they're in, I don't think they could afford to play around with this project and mess it up. I'm not really someone who highlights these kind of things, but it's something that stood out for me personally, and it was some of the camera shots and the visuals that we got. They were really cool, which also adds to the scene, and you can tell they've really thought about a lot of these things that they're doing. So episode 1 was really all about the parallel between our 2 main characters, which are Daredevil and Kingpin. Matt Murdock obviously quits being Daredevil after the shock death of Foggy Nelson. A crazy way to start the show by separating the original 3 characters, especially having a big fight at the start of the show, which makes this feel more like a continuation of the Netflix version, because if this was a Disney Plus show, season 1, which it technically is, but if it was something that had no continuation, we would not have got that fight at the very beginning. I'm someone who likes when a show isn't afraid to kill off a big character, so this worked for me. As sad as it may be for the franchise and everything, I actually liked the death. It actually led to something as well. Episode 1 was about seeing Matt quit the whole Daredevil thing, just focus on being a lawyer now, which at least his business is booming, but he no longer has Foggy. Karen moves to San Francisco, so it splits all the OG 3. Also the parallel of, as Matt Murdock is going through it with the death and the split up and everything, Kingpin is thriving and eventually becomes mayor of New York. One thing I really liked is that we get a dive into Kingpin's strategy, the politics, all his master plans, the manipulation of people, and it was really well done where we get the opinion of the people. We get an insight of how divided New York is, which really felt realistic with the politics in general. The use of the media and social media is done very well. We get that blog from that BB lady, I forget her name, but it really shows the city's views from the outside, while we also get how Kingpin and his advisors work the whole city with their schemes. Kingpin at this point, he has everything he wants, plans are going perfectly, but his wife seems to be his weakness, so we'll see how that plays out. He has to shed his weakness, I think, by the end of this season. Episode 2 was more of the same, but we were getting more in-depth, but it also added the interesting element of the White Tiger, that whole plot involving this innocent guy that was being attacked. White Tiger gets involved, causes the accidental death of a police officer. It seems like the police have got more infiltrated officers, kind of like how we saw in the previous Netflix seasons. Still seems to have a sort of broken system, but not just for Matt, who tries to defend the White Tiger as his client, but also for the Kingpin. One of those police generals, or whatever you want to call them, the higher-ups at the police station, he straight up said to Kingpin, "I'm going to make sure you last less than a month in office," which for a police officer to openly say is kind of sus. It's not something professional really. This again puts Kingpin and Matt Murdock in a position against the police, against the law and the system, but for different reasons, again showing their parallels. Kingpin wants a dictatorship pretty much, where everyone likes him, everyone works for him, while Matt just wants justice, even more when he's not the Daredevil anymore. Having said that, episode 2 does seem to end with the return of Daredevil. After he's just witnessed that corruption with the police, they literally tried to batter a blind man. That's one thing to look forward to in episode 3. We'll probably get Daredevil exploring the corruption of these police officers, and it helps his client, helps his own character, helps Matt Murdock in the process, and a good show will always find a way to interlock multiple storylines, and that's what I think will happen. We'll see the Punisher somewhere along the lines. I don't know if episode 3, but definitely by episode 4 we will have seen the Punisher. I want to highlight Charlie Cox's performance. He returned as the Daredevil, and it felt like no time had passed. It felt like the same Daredevil, no stupid approach like they did in She-Hulk. One thing that stood out for me was the show's usage of Daredevil's hearing sense. I think maybe they overdid it a little bit, but it also makes sense because it's a way of incorporating his abilities while he's Matt Murdock, which makes up for those people that just want to see action and fighting all the time. Every character that Daredevil interacts with as well, it's always a good scene, interesting dynamics with all the different characters. It's not like they got the same copy-paste relationship with every character, and this is usually a sign of how good a character is. Also, I want to highlight Vincent D'Onofrio's performance as Kingpin. Does a good job as always. As I've mentioned, this show highlights the parallels of Kingpin and Daredevil very well, which only elevates their feud higher and sets things up for those final few episodes where I assume they will meet face to face again. The show did a good job as well of bringing us those returning characters like Vanessa, like Bullseye, Karen, but also merging them with the new characters, getting them to interact with new characters, which again connects the Disney and the Netflix shows together, and it makes it all just flow well. The MCU has also allowed the expansion of New York to be felt for this series, which will eventually have to reach out to the other heroes in New York. They will have heard of the Kingpin by now, especially with him being mayor of New York, which by the end we should be seeing MCU cameos. I don't think we'll get Spider-Man, but we'll see who else could appear. Unfortunately, it could be someone like Echo or Kate Bishop, so don't get your hopes up, but we should be seeing a MCU cameo by the end of this. The White Tiger story, in terms of who he is and the whole court case that he's got, the police storyline, that will all be interesting to flesh out and see where it goes. But yeah, the standards are low at Marvel. So far, I've been very impressed that Disney has actually managed to keep the same levels as Netflix in terms of the themes and the elements. They tried to do this with Echo, but it didn't work for me. Maybe it did for the fighting scenes, but that's just because they added a bunch of blood, but the mood didn't stay the same. But like I said, here they've built a solid foundation for the show with these first 2 episodes. Hopefully it gets better, but it's Marvel, so I'm not going to get my hopes up. As always, I'd appreciate if you could hit that like button. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments about the MCU, Daredevil, what you thought of these 2 episodes. Also, if you could sub to the channel as well, that would be massively appreciated as we close in on 1K subscribers. Thank you for your time. Have a great rest of your day.